Thank you, Rich. Hello, everyone. My name is Joanna Bouch, and I am so excited to welcome you to our 2022 U.S. Senate Candidate Forum, co-hosted by Citizen Action of Wisconsin and People's Action. Buenas noches y bienvenidos a todos. Ahora quiero decirle a ustedes que hablan español, si necesita interpretación en español, por favor, haga clic en el enlace. I am the Movement Politics Director at Citizen Action of Wisconsin, and I am eager to host this conversation with candidates for Wisconsin's U.S. Senate seat. But before we get to that, I want to hand it over to Brooke Adams, the Movement Politics Director at People's Action, and Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action of Wisconsin. Take it away, Dr. Craig.
Great to have you all here this evening. I'm Robert Craig. I'm the Executive Director of Citizen Action of Wisconsin. I know you all want to get to the main event, but we are holding this with purpose. So I'll say a little and then Brooke will about what we're doing and why and how we see the Senate race. And then we will get to the main event, which is the forum with our great Senate primary candidates. So we have a lot of members on the call, but some outsiders and some media. So just to be aware, Citizen Action Wisconsin was founded nearly 40 years ago, and we have grown into one of the most powerful grassroots organizations in Wisconsin, and one of the few with a deep membership and permanent local organizers who live in most of the major regions of the state. And our power actually has increased rapidly since the workers' rights protests in 2011, the attack on organized labor. And we've actually doubled in size since 2014, building a great multiracial organizing team where we're trying to build power across the state. Now, in addition to our organizing, we augment our robust grassroots organizing with cutting edge campaign capacities, such as a deep canvas, which a number of you have worked with or familiar with, digital communication, earned media, and in elections, we do, when we can raise the resources, do paid campaign communications, but that is built on our organization, on our organizing. And we are very well positioned to influence both swing voting and base voting in the state of Wisconsin. We have membership chapters that we call them organizing co-ops in 6 key regions of the state and that hold the balance of power. And we have a lot of members in the suburban ring of Milwaukee that's become also a tipping point, but we are headquartered in Milwaukee, the center of racial diversity in Wisconsin, and also the largest center of drop-off voters. Now, our theory of change starts with our issues. We're a national leader on healthcare, have been for decades, which is a huge voting concern every election. But we're also now a pace setter on climate change and its relation to economic and racial equity. And we always have fought and continue to fight to defend and expand democracy. At the center of our strategy is to organize to bridge the regional and racial divides, which are exploited by selfish interests to hold Wisconsin back. So our approach is to build a rural-urban community consensus behind the bold reforms that Wisconsin needs to build prosperous communities and sustainable communities everywhere across the state. We actually believe that democracies thrive when elections are about big issues that impact voters' lives, not political personalities, candidate branding, fake scandals, and trumped up culture wars. Of course, a lot of trouble pushing back on that right now, but we are certainly trying. We work to elect champions and allies that run on our major issues during the campaign, earn popular mandates through their electoral. On the inside, work with us and our members, the outside, on inside-outside strategies in deep partnership to actually get the reforms that we're fighting for all the time, in which these elected candidates will have run on. And we really think that's the only way. Organize people on the outside with allies on the inside that are like-minded in order to beat back the dominant voices of self-interested lobbyists, greedy billionaires, and other selfish interests that far too often dominate policy outcomes and what happens in Congress and the state legislature for that matter. So I think you all here, we have such a good turnout because I think you all know that we have an historic opportunity with this election. We and many others have been organizing for years to build progressive power. And for the first time in half a century, we have enough power in Washington to be talking about very big, bold generational reforms that will really improve people's lives. And that is because of progressive political victories and grassroots organizing and movements over the last 5 or 6 years, and especially in the elections of 2018 and 2020. So although Congress is on the verge of these reforms, I think we're all well aware that we're 2 votes short of the majority we need in the Senate to advance all the critical reforms we need. Right now, we can only put things in a budget resolution that can get exactly 50 Democrats to support it. And that's been a challenge, but we can't get full protection of voting rights, raising minimum wage, restoring union rights, or critical elements of preventing a climate catastrophe without more votes. And Wisconsin is one of the handful of places where that could happen in 2022. We don't think the successful roadmap to passing President Biden's entire agenda that does not run through winning this Senate race and sending a progressive to Washington. Now, our roadmap for beating Ron Johnson is turnout, quite frankly, because conservative politicians over the years, and Trump has extended this further, have learned how to supercharge their base with a steady diet of fear, hatred, and dog whistle racism. And we have not been, Democrats often cannot match that and lose elections because of it. And this is especially true in midterm elections, which are lower turnout than presidential elections. And there's much to emphasis still on these swing voters, a shrinking group, this mythical group of moderates, and far too little on turning out our own base, as Republicans get very good at doing that. In fact, Trump in 2016, Donald Trump, and 2020 confounded all of the projections of Democrats and the media and the pollsters, and actually got massive more turnout than expected. In fact, Wisconsin's polls were 8 points off last cycle, worst in the country. And so we need to understand this is about turnout. And we also need to understand that although Senator Ron Johnson looks irrational to us, where we say to ourselves, how can this man even run for re-election? In fact, this is part of his strategy to imitate Donald Trump and supercharge their base so they swamp the election. So we need to match that. And in fact, in 2016, Hillary Clinton lost this state to Donald Trump by less than the margin of the drop-off in young African-American voters in Wisconsin. And post-election analyses showed it was because many of those voters just didn't see anything in Hillary Clinton's message that would improve their lives or help their families and their communities. So that's what we need to change. And so what we are trying to do in this election is to identify candidates that can inspire in this way that will run on big issues. And in fact, the Governor Evers, who's done many good things, but he is in a different lane. He is literally just playing for swing voters, and he is set up that way. So we need the US Senate candidate to drive turnout. And so that is what this forum is about, to identify such a candidate, and we will endorse if we can identify such a candidate. And so we're hoping that a candidate will begin to separate themselves in this forum. So with that, I want to turn it over to Brooke Adams. We're part of People's Action. We helped create it at Citizen Action. It runs through the battleground states and other states. It's a federation of groups like Citizen Action, and it's greatly increasing our ability to actually play a role in this election. So Brooke Adams is our Movement Politics Director at People's Action. So thank you, Brooke.
Thank you so much, Robert. Really excited to be here with you all tonight. And I'm going to kick us off with just a really quick summary of the bad and the good. So some of the bad, we have an enormous task ahead of us in 2022. Many of you all were part of our Deep Canvas program last year and got to experience the fact that we came together as a country to defeat Donald Trump and flip the Senate, and made an absolutely heroic effort to turn out voters in the country. But when you break down the results, we were actually only 90,000 votes away from a Republican trifecta in DC. So let's be real, 2022 is going to be one of the most high stakes elections and fights of our lifetimes. We have absolutely got to defeat the odds and maintain Democratic control of Congress. And we have a historic opportunity to do so by electing a movement progressive US Senator in Wisconsin. And let's be clear, establishment actors are using the stakes of the upcoming midterms to make the case that Democrats have to play it safe, right, and distance themselves from taking bold stances on immigration, healthcare, the environment, workers' rights, other defining issues of our time. And we know that this is a recipe for Democrats to be the long-term minority party in this country. We have got to build the power to govern for a generation rather than scrambling once again to win one-off races by slim margins. And in order to do that, we've got to make a long-term investment in organizing in all parts of the country, from rural areas to mid-sized towns to urban areas, and to actually moving voters who are conflicted to see their stake in building a government and an economy where all of us can thrive. So the good, People's Action and Citizen Action of Wisconsin, we've got a strategy. We are very excited to be using our Deep Canvas program to elect progressive champions in Republican-held swing districts in 2022, right? We see these districts and these states as some of the key places where fights of our time around immigration, workers' rights, the economy are going to be playing out. And deep canvassing is the most effective method of persuading conflicted and undecided voters to vote for our candidates. It is also the only method that is proven to shift people's worldview to resist negative attacks in the long term. So we are aggressively recruiting, endorsing, campaigning for progressive movement champions who are running in some of the most critical seats in the country, and Wisconsin is right at the top of that list. So if you are ready to join our movement to win in Wisconsin, you can sign up to be a part of our Deep Canvas program now by texting WIN, that's W-I-N, WIN, to 51767. Looking forward to seeing you all as part of our program. So before we jump into the forum itself, let's take a couple of seconds to review a quick video that shows us what's at stake here in Wisconsin this upcoming year.
In a healthy society, we take care of each other, but Ron Johnson is only interested in pulling us apart.
Senator Ron Johnson is pushing back against accusations he profited off the coronavirus outbreak.
I see no reason to be pushing vaccines on people. This didn't seem as like an armed insurrection to me.
I knew those were people that love this country, that truly respect law enforcement, would never do anything to break a law, so I wasn't concerned.
In 2020, People's Action and Citizen Action Wisconsin built a powerful Deep Canvas program to win the changes we need in our state and elect officials who bring us together. Next November, we have a chance to replace Ron Johnson for a better Wisconsin, but we have to make a choice. Which candidate can unite us around what really matters?
Wow, I don't know about y'all, but I'm feeling pretty fired up to give Ron Johnson the boot. All right, let's move into things. So tonight we will hear from Dr. Jillian Bettino, Mandela Barnes, Sarah Godlewski, Alex Lazary, and Tom Nelson. Unfortunately, Alex could not join us live, so we will hear his responses via recorded video. So this is how things are going to work tonight. To be clear, this event is not a debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. Following introductions, members from each organizing cooperative from around the state will ask questions, and each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. We will end the forum with each candidate having 2 minutes to give their closing remarks. Now, that is the role of our candidates. For those tuning in on Crowdcast, again, we want to thank you for being here and for your participation. I'm hearing that the chat is live. We will take one question from the audience at the end. So please use the ask a question function to submit your question to possibly have it asked at the end of this, closer to the end of this event. Following the forum, you will receive an email with a survey to provide your feedback on the responses you hear tonight and to let us know which candidate you want to see supported by Citizen Action in the primary election. Candidates, please be aware we have a tight agenda this evening and we'll be strict with our timekeeping. One positive in this virtual world is we can control the mute button. So let's welcome our candidates. We are going to begin with a welcome.
All right, Joanna, everybody here at Citizen Action and People's Action, just want to thank you so much for having me here. Truly excited to continue the partnership that's been developed over the last 10 years now, ever since my time as an organizer with Micah. I've been proud to work side by side with Citizen Action. I'm proud to have earned this support of Citizen Action and my campaigns that got me to this position as Lieutenant Governor. It's really exciting when we talk about movement politics, because I think about 3 years ago where we had a movement-focused campaign, and that's how I was able to win my primary 3-1, 2-1. I won 68% of the vote, 71 out of 72 counties right here in Wisconsin, because we delivered a message of opportunity. We talked about the issues that mattered. Like I said, I was outspent 3-1, but we ran a movement-focused campaign. That's exactly what we're doing now. Now, think about all the fights we've been in together, whether it was the fight for 15, whether it was the fight for the rights of immigrants in our state to get a driver's license, to be able to go to college here in our university system at the in-state tuition rate, as it should be, and the rights for our workers, whether public sector or private sector, to collectively bargain. We've had some really tough fights on our hands, and I'll say the biggest one was getting rid of Scott Walker, and that's what we did 3 years ago. And now I'm proud as Lieutenant Governor to continue the multiple fights that we continue to face, whether it was resistance to the Trump administration or whether it's the proactive work that we've been able to do to fight climate change. And serving as the chair of the Governor's Task Force on Climate Change, I'm proud to have partnered with Citizen Action to develop a bold, ambitious agenda for the state of Wisconsin to address this crisis. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people who come from situations like I come from, being born in the city of Milwaukee, not being born into wealth, not being born into a politically connected family, we weren't able to always see these sorts of opportunities. And I hope that this campaign can serve as an inspiration of those who come from marginalized situations, whether you're in the city of Milwaukee, whether you're in Hayward, to know that you do have the power to change things. But the only way we change things is when we do it together. For so many people, the American dream is so far out of reach, and that's why we're fighting to make the American dream an American reality. And I'm excited to get it done with so many of you who are here with us today.
Thank you, Mandela. We're gonna move it over to Dr. Bettino.
Hi, everyone. My mute button's down there. Nice to see everyone. So wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So I'm Jillian Bettino. I know many of the people, but for those of you who don't know me, I live in Wausau. I've been here for 16 years with my family. I'm a physician, a practicing breast radiologist. I'm married to a physician, a urologist, and we have raised 6 wonderful children in central Wisconsin. They've gone to public schools, and we are very proud transplanted Wisconsinites. But that's not why I'm running. That's not why I'm running for this race. I am running for this position because we need to meet the moment in our history at this time with a new type of leadership. I want to see leadership that is bold, fearless, progressive, and accountable to the voters of Wisconsin. From north to south and east to west, agricultural voters, urban voters, everyone needs and deserves a representation that is so direly, I think, just begging to be addressed right now across our state and across our country. In order to do this, I would really love to see some different types of folks coming up and stepping up. I am a scientist, I am a physician, I am a mother, I am a wife, I am a climate change activist who has solar and wind and geothermal. I will fight to make sure that we protect our state and our country and our globe, and that we create a brighter, beautiful future with opportunity and safety for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bettino. Let's welcome Sarah Godlewski.
Well, thanks, Joanna. Hello, Citizen Action. It's great to be here with all of you today. And I just want to start by saying, quite frankly, I don't know if I'd even be your state treasurer if it wasn't for many of you on this forum right now, because we've been in the trenches together. For those of you that don't know, I actually joined my Western Wisconsin Citizen Action Co-op in 2016 because I was devastated when Donald Trump took the White House. And I knew we had to continue this grassroots fight because it's about people, not profits. But shortly after that, I found out about Scott Walker's power grab when he tried to remove the state treasurer's office from the Constitution. And I thought that was wrong. And people kept telling me that it was a done deal, that there was no way we would be able to stop Scott Walker. But I went to my Citizen Actor, Jeff Smith, And he said, you know what, Sarah, I think we can do this. And we turned to Citizens Action. And thanks to many of you, we organized, we shared information. I was on the Battleground podcast many times, and we let people know in our state what the state treasurer should be doing for Wisconsin. And I'm proud to say that together, we stopped Scott Walker's power grab with 62% of the vote, which is a landslide victory. And then after we saved the state treasurer's office, thanks to a lot of you and your encouragement, I decided to step up and run for this office. I earned Citizen Action's endorsement, and we worked together. And in my race, we flipped 9 Trump counties and took a larger part of the vote share in a midterm election than the governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. And honestly, we've been co-governing and fighting for economic security together ever since. Look, I think as progressives, people sometimes underestimate us. I know I've been underestimated my entire life, but whenever someone has told me what I can't do, I show them what I can do. I know this election is not going to be easy, but we know how to do hard things, and we can't let these tough fights stop us in the past, and we won't let them stop us now. And I know together we can flip this seat for Wisconsin.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Let's hear from Alex Lasry.
I'm Alex Lasry. I was the senior vice president for the now NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks before I got in this race. And I got in this race because I thought we needed a change in Washington. You know, for the last 10 or 11 years, we've really only had one US senator fighting on our behalf and fighting for our interests. And I'm running to give Tammy Baldwin a true partner in DC to bring some real change and real results for the people of Wisconsin. And what I thought we needed in that candidate was someone who actually has a track record of having gotten things done. You know, politics is the only profession that I've seen where running for office or chairing a commission or just proposing legislation is seen as an actual accomplishment. And we're running on a track record of having actually gotten real results. You know, I pay a $15 minimum wage at Fiserv Forum. We've created thousands of good paying union jobs right here in Wisconsin. And we've actually shown that you don't have to make a false choice between creating a successful development and making sure that we protect people from climate change and making sure that it's creating good green jobs. And so what we hope to show with this campaign is that progressive values are how we're going to move this country forward. And what I think we need is someone who can actually show that they've gotten a track record of having brought people together to get things done. And that's why we've seen so much enthusiasm and support for this campaign. And it's why Labor has been supporting us. We are so lucky to have the endorsements from the Teamsters, IBEW 494, Milwaukee's local IATSE, the operating engineers and the pipe trades. And that's because we're actually walking the walk. We're leading on these issues. And that's why we're the only campaign in this race and one of the only ones in the country to have a unionized campaign staff. Because what we want to show everyone is that we're not going to just talk about issues, we're actually going to lead on them. And if you want to see what someone's going to do with their campaign, with what they do in Washington, look at how they run their campaign and look at how they've run their organization. We're running to give Tammy Baldwin a real partner in DC to get some real results for the people of Wisconsin.
All right, and our final candidate introduction will be from Tom Nelson. Tom?
Thank you, Joanna, and thank you for everyone who has joined us today. It's good to see everyone, I guess, virtually. And I want to thank Citizen Action for all of your support for my races going back 2004 when I was first elected. And I'm proud to say this because in this race, what we all are united to doing is to beating Ron Johnson. I'm the only candidate here who comes from a red part of the state who's won election, re-election 6 times, 3 as a legislator and 3 as a county executive. My story is a lot like your story, which is I grew up in a blue collar neighborhood, Carolyn Drive in Little Chute, Wisconsin. And on that block, all the dads worked at paper mills except for my dad, who wore the white collar, and he was a Lutheran pastor. And so I learned 2 very important lessons growing up. Number 1, the importance of serving your neighbor. And then number 2, in time, the importance of working families and how folks need champions. Now, as a legislator and as county executive, I've only supported those pieces of legislation and services that benefit the folks on Carolyn Drive, working families and farm families all across our state. As a legislator, as a county executive, I was proud to champion issues like taking on payday lenders, saving senior care, coming very close to passing a precursor to the Green New Deal when we were in the legislature. The way I look at it, we basically have three things that we have to accomplish. Number one, we need economic security, and that means a $15 minimum wage. That means making sure everyone collectively bargain. We need health security. Specifically, we need Medicare for all. It's unacceptable. 30 million Americans are without health insurance tonight. That has to stop. And finally, we need a planet. Climate change is real. It's an existential crisis, and it's on all of us to do everything we can to reverse climate change. And we can do that through a blue-green coalition by uniting labor and the environmental movement together to accomplish that objective and so many more. Thank you.
Thank you all for those introductions. Let's begin our questions for the evening. And we're going to start with Northwestern Co-op member Salika Lawton.
Hello, my name is Salika Lawton, and I am in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, the Northwoods of Wisconsin, at the confluence of the Eau Claire and the Chippewa Rivers, and we represent Northwestern Wisconsin. So the historic Black Lives Matter protests of 2020, the largest civic mobilization in American history, has put mass incarceration and over-policing of people of color communities under greater public scrutiny more than ever before. Despite this public outpouring, reform efforts have been stymied at all levels by the structural power of the status quo. Massive federal investments in incarceration and policing from the 1970s through to the early 2000s were the driving force in creating this current system. My question for the candidates is, what major reforms and policies will you support and fight for that will end mass incarceration and the aggressive over-policing of communities?
Thank you, Salika. All right, we're going to begin the answering. Remember, you have 90 seconds, and we will start with Dr. Bettino.
Wonderful question. So, as we know, mass incarceration has been utilized as a tool for voter suppression, and is still being utilized that way. In order to push back on mass incarceration, we will need to do a number of things. So first of all, we need to end the war on drugs. We need to legalize marijuana and forgive all terms and sentencing that have been generated as a result of that. We need to have aggressive rehabilitation and re-entry into society, including education, housing, and repayment of fees. We need to stop privatization of our prisons, and we need to absolutely ensure that we address the perpetual causes of poverty, like education, criminalization, and over-policing of neighborhoods. I think in order to do any one of these things, we have to visualize every policy looking back and going forward through the lens of racial justice.
Thank you. Let's move to Sarah Godlewski.
Well, thanks for the question, Salika. Go Eau Claire. But, look, I just want to start by saying I don't think it's unreasonable for Black and brown Wisconsinites to want to live in a community and look to the police to feel safe, not worry about getting shot or being arrested. And what we know about our system is that there's systemic racism at every single turn, whether you look at arrests where Black Americans are 2 times more likely to be arrested than white Americans, to even sentencing and imprisonment. We're right here in Wisconsin. Black Wisconsinites are 12 times more likely to be imprisoned than white Wisconsinites. And so we've got to first start with taking some bold policy changes. And for me, it starts with low-level nonviolent crimes. I mean, the fact that we are arresting for some of these things and putting people behind bars for minor offenses for, 10, 20 years, we've got to first and foremost get rid of sentencing, where we have mandatory sentencing minimums. We also have to get rid of cash bail. Like, these are policies that are putting us behind and having some of the worst incarceration rates in the entire country. We also have to legalize marijuana. I mean, the fact that a Black Wisconsinite is 4 times more likely not only to be arrested, but imprisoned than a white Wisconsinite is nuts. And we've got to do this in an equitable way. You know, the other thing that we have to do in talking about our police force is how we even think about first responders. You know, right now, when we send our police to do to address nonviolent crimes, it could be with mental health or even things with domestic violence. We need to send police not by themselves, but we need workers or with social services, folks who are experts that can help de-escalate these and really address them at the heart of, I think, what are causing these issues. And honestly, at the end of the day, we've got a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we are going to move to Alex Lasry.
Yeah, you know, this is something that we've actually led on as an organization through my efforts with the Milwaukee Bucks. You know, we've boycotted basketball games to ensure that we were bringing national attention to the shootings of Jacob Blake and the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. You know, we put out a statement that I think really led the way in demanding that the Republican legislature come back to work and pass police reform bill. And I think it led the way for a number of organizations and sports teams to call on Congress to pass the George Floyd and Policing Act. And that's something that I am for and I think should be one of our top priorities. And it's also things that, you know, I've been able to do with the Racine Correctional Facility and the Milwaukee Police Department. You know, we worked with after the tasering of Sterling Brown with the Milwaukee Police Department and Mark Thompson, Sterling's lawyer, to ensure that we were actually creating real reform throughout the police department. And with the Racine Correctional Facility, seeing the impact of drug incarceration and recidivism in this state. And so the things that we need to make sure that we're focusing on is not just over policing, but also people who come out of the criminal justice system to make sure that they're getting the education and are able to get jobs when they come out to be proper members of society again. And so, you know, I think these are some of the things that we need to look at, not just how we're making sure people aren't going into the system, but also making sure that when people come out, that they're able to be productive members of society again. And, you know, that's something that I've got a track record of having accomplished things on, and look forward to getting to the US Senate, making this a top priority.
All right, let's hear from Tom Nelson.
Right, thank you. Thank you for the question, Salika. To answer that question, let me share with you the Outagamie County story. I'm the only candidate here who can actually point to concrete action on these issues. The Outagamie County story is this. Well, 11 or 12 years ago, we were looking at building another jail. And we knew that was going to cost a lot of money, and it really wasn't a good solution at all. And so we did is we brought together Democrats, Republicans. We brought together law enforcement, public defenders, district attorney, county board, and we looked at how we can address that. And what we did is we built a criminal justice treatment services department that goes to the root causes of a lot of the problems, things that we can address before people go into the system. We're one of the only counties that has 3 alternative courts: a mental health court, a drug treatment court, and a veterans court, where we bring folks in, put them through a program, address the root causes, be able to change things, send them back into society, being productive citizens, keeping families together. We're also one of the few counties that has the initiative of what's called the evidence-based decision-making process, in which we go through and identify low risk, medium risk, and high risk offenders so that we don't send those folks into the system. And what this has to do with is this gives us the tools. It gives decision makers and policymakers the tools to make these changes. That's the type of action, that's the type of leadership that you need in Washington, doing these things not just for communities in Wisconsin, like Outagamie County, but all over the country.
Thank you, Tom. All right, let's wrap this question up with Mandela Barnes.
Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful to be able to participate in this part of the conversation specifically because I am the candidate who has actually been working on these issues, and not just because of the campaign. As an organizer, partnered with Citizen Action when we kicked off our 11 by 15 campaign to reduce Wisconsin's prison population. Now, the unfortunate reality is that since the turn of the century, Wisconsin began to spend more money on our Department of Corrections than our university system. It is a priorities mismatch that leads to fewer opportunities for people all across the state, which in turn leads to more crime. Now, Wisconsin has the highest rate of Black male incarceration, and unfortunately, this has touched many of my friends and many of my family members. It is a personal issue for me. And we also have a disproportionate rate of Indigenous incarceration in the state. It is something we should be ashamed of, but I can say that it is something we have been working diligently to fix. I serve on the task force with the Attorney General, and now I'm proud to say that Wisconsin has the lowest prison population that we've had in 20 years. And it is because we have made significant investments in treatment, alternatives, and diversion programs. And on the issue of policing, it's important for us to make the upfront investments in communities that give them the opportunity to thrive. When people have employment, when people have the ability to express themselves in productive ways, there's less of a need for a police presence. So when we make sure that our schools are resourced, when we make sure that job opportunities that exist in wealthy parts of the state exist in the lower income parts of the state, we will see a better outcome in criminal justice. And I come from the zip code that has the highest rate of incarceration in the country. This is me speaking from personal experience, and this is the work that I have been dedicated to. And I'm proud of the strides that we have made right here in Wisconsin. We finally put forth a budget that prioritized spending on the UW system versus the Department of Corrections.
Thank you. All right, we are moving on to our next question. Folks, we're running a little bit behind time, so we're going to be a little bit more strict with our time limits, but let's move to welcoming Kathy Allen from the Driftless Co-op to ask a question on climate and equity. Kathy?
Thank you, Joanna. I'm Kathy Allen from La Crosse on the banks of the Mississippi River, and I'm a member of Citizen Action's Driftless Region Co-op, which covers the southwestern portion of Wisconsin. As a biologist and lifelong nature lover, I am extremely concerned about the impacts that climate change will have on all of our lives. We are currently facing 4 overlapping crises: climate change, racial inequality, economic inequality, and recovering from the damage wrought by a global pandemic. The Thrive Act addresses all 4 crises in an integrated manner by investing $1 trillion per year for 10 years to cut greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030 in a way that would create 15 million good union jobs. The investments will focus especially on people of color and others locked out of economic opportunity by structural inequality. If elected to the US Senate, would you co-sponsor the Thrive Act?
All right, we are going to begin this round of answers from Sarah Godlewski.
Well, thank you, Kathy, for that question. And you hit the nail on the head. We have to address all of these crises head on. And when you look at the 8 pillars that are captured in the Thrive Act, they're really important guiding principles that are addressing inequities, climate change, and economic opportunity. You know, something that Citizen Action is really proud of is their work to co-govern. That's something that we've really worked hard on. And quite frankly, those principles we're seeing right now in the infrastructure and Build Back Better legislation. You know, we're finally going to get lead pipes out of our communities that have been in Black and brown communities right here in Wisconsin. We're going to be building infrastructure using union labor where people are going to get good wages and good benefits. And we're also going to be able to expand broadband where 28% of Wisconsin's rural population who doesn't have access now can do that for economic opportunities and educational opportunities. But, you know, something that I think is missing when I look at the Thrive Act that we have seen very clearly throughout this last legislative session is we've got to hold special interests accountable. And that's got to be a 9th pillar. When I look at next gen for a Thrive Act, that's something that has to be front and center. You know, we just saw how the fossil fuel companies literally took out a clean electricity standard, which would have held utility companies accountable to actually transition from fossil fuels. Right now, we're 80% fossil fuels and 20% new energy, green energy. We've got to actually hold them accountable to do that, but that was taken out of our infrastructure package. Or if you look at the pharmaceutical companies right now, I mean, it's crazy to me that we are spending money and investing in new drugs, but yet we're not allowed to negotiate
Thank you, Sarah. All right, let's move to Alex Lasry.
So what we want to make sure, and I think what we've seen, especially from the pandemic, is how the pandemic and climate change has exacerbated income inequality and racial and economic justice. And what we want to make sure that we're able to do is actually show that we can actually close that. And I think what that means is that through climate change, and I think through the Build Back Better agenda, that we can make sure that we help close this, what the pandemic has exacerbated, which is racial and economic inequality. And so the Build Back Better agenda is an incredible down payment on making sure that we solve those problems. But we need to go forward, and I'm looking forward to getting to Congress to be able to work with our colleagues in the Senate and the House as we look to use climate justice to help narrow the economic and racial injustice that we've seen, because climate change has shown, and so has the pandemic, that that people all across the state are, and especially communities of color and poor communities, are the ones that are taking the brunt of these issues. And so what we need to make sure that we do is use the Build Back Better agenda as a down payment on solving these problems, and then continue to move forward. And I'm looking forward to being part of that solution.
Tom?
Great, and thank you again for the question, Kathy. The Thrive Act is very important, but you know what? It's a start. I support the Green New Deal. That has got to be the priority when it comes to climate change and other environmental issues. And the reason why is we can't take half measures. We have to hit the sun and be aggressive. And that's exactly what the Green New Deal does. And that's the reason why I signed the Green New Deal pledge, and why I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Sunrise Movement, folks who are on the front line tackling this issue, bringing awareness, not just in this country, but around the world, just how important an issue this is. And we need to take on the tough fights. And that's why I pose line 3 and line 5. For a lot of reasons mentioned below. And that is because it is a direct violation of treaty rights. That is not how we should treat the First Peoples, to say nothing about its impact on the environment. I did a 72 county listing session tour last summer, did in 43 days. And the climate crisis came up time and again. In Jackson County, at the Jackson County Fair, of all the issues, it was the #1 issue. And that's because the climate crisis affects everyone. It affects folks in the city and in the countryside. Now, for a lot of people, this might not have been on the radar 2 or 3 years ago. But what we need to do is we need to get serious about this. We need to make investments in 21st century infrastructure. We need to make investments into renewable energy. Right now, this state depends 75–80% on coal and fossil fuels. That has to stop. Wisconsin is the birthplace of the environmental movement. This is something that is a natural and something you should expect your U.S. Senator to champion.
Thank you, Tom. Mandela?
Hey, yeah, thank you so much. And, a lot of people care about racial justice. A lot of people care about climate change when it's time to campaign. But I'm very proud of the fact that, again, as an organizer, this is the work that we were a part of. Michael was a part of the Cleaner Valley Coalition that took on the large utility because of the coal burning power plants and the impact on Black and brown children with disproportionate rates of respiratory illness as a result. I'm so proud of the work that we did as a task force, bringing together people from all over the state, indigenous leaders, farmers, labor unions, you name it. And we put forth the most bold agenda to combat climate change. And the unfortunate reality is there weren't a whole bunch of people who are present today who were present during those conversations as we set Wisconsin in an entirely new direction. I'm proud that we are now writing the state's clean energy plan. This is less ambitious. This isn't about what I want to do as a U.S. Senator. This is about the work that we're doing now and how we can continue that work with bold leadership, partnering with organizations like Citizen Action, who are going to get it done. And I always talk about my dad. His job working on the assembly line for 30 years was assembling catalytic converters. The need for catalytic converters came because of the Clean Air Act, requiring new emission standards for vehicles. That created employment for he and thousands of other Black people, brown people, you name it, people who had living wage employment, people who were able to retire comfortably. And my very first speech on the assembly floor was in opposition to a mine that violated treaty rights. This is the work I've been a part of. And this is the work that I look forward to continuing as a U.S. Senator. And of course, a Green New Deal is the path to get us there, but we have to think so much deeper and so much broader than just a slogan, because unfortunately, that a lot of people get wrapped up and take that easy way out. But we have a real opportunity in front of us to get this done, and we're doing it already.
Thank you, Mandela. All right, let's wrap this one up with Dr. Bettino.
Okay, so I would absolutely 100% support the Thrive Act. You know, in a country with a GDP of $20.9 trillion a year, 1 trillion towards a future for our children, a planet for our children, education, racial justice, making sure that we keep our fossil fuels in the ground, that we go to 100% renewable energy, that we can evolve the technology that is necessary to support a clean energy future. I would absolutely support it. You know, we just passed a $1.2 trillion over 10 years effort to revitalize our communities and begin to build back better. And we're still fighting for that. I think that this is, you know, that's a start, but the climate change impact, let's be honest, is just not enough within that bill. It's really just to begin that conversation. So I would absolutely support it, a carbon fee and dividend, and all of the pieces that go with that. We need to close loopholes for oil companies. We need to make sure that hedge fund managers aren't spending public teachers' retirement funds. And we need to do it aggressively, responsively, and boldly. So yes, I think we can do that, and I'm 100% behind the Thrive Act.
Thank you all. All right, I want to hand it over to our Northeastern Co-op member, Renee Gash. Please welcome Renee.
Hi, everyone. My question is about healthcare. I'm Renee. I live in De Pere, Wisconsin, and I'm part of the Northeast Co-op. My question about the healthcare is the US healthcare system is the most expensive and inaccessible in the world because it has been rigged to maximize profits for the healthcare industry. And I have a two-part question for you. First is about Medicare for All. Do you support it? And if not, what would you support that would address the magnitude of the crisis? The second question is about Big Pharma. Big Pharma has used its lobbying power to grant itself functionally unlimited patent and intellectual property rights to charge whatever it wants for medications. Would you support revoking prescription drug patents for pharma corporations that price gouge? And amending international trade agreements to manufacture their own life-saving medications when they are not affordable or available from pharmaceutical companies? Thank you.
We're going to first hear from Alex Lasry.
So look, I think we all need to start from a position. I think everyone here can agree that healthcare is a human right, that there is not anyone in this country who should be out without healthcare. And it's bad morally and it's bad economically. No one should have to choose between starting their own business or losing their job and healthcare. And so where I start from is that healthcare is a human right and one that everyone should have. And that's why I'm for a robust public option, because I want to make sure that we can get to universal healthcare as quickly as possible and most efficiently as possible. And that's where I believe, you know, a Medicare for all who want it is going to be the fastest and quickest way to get to universal healthcare. And I think when we're talking about healthcare, we also need to make sure, as you said, that we're talking about prescription drug prices. We need to allow the government to make sure that they can negotiate prescription drug prices so that we can bring those prices down. And what I also think is, look, you know, one of the reasons that we've got one of the, you know, probably the most powerful and best vaccine was developed here in America is because we give our pharmaceutical industry and investments from the government to be able to come up with these types of innovations. But we also have to make sure that as they're not innovating and they become more standard, that we're allowing the patents to run out so that they become more traditional and more standard form, so that people who need insulin aren't paying exorbitant prices. And that's where, I think we need to be on healthcare.
Tom?
Not only do I support Medicare for all, but I've made that the cornerstone of this campaign. And we're not going to back off on it just because a bunch of DC consultants tell us to. We're supporting for a number of reasons. Number one, this is the right thing to do. There are 30 million Americans that are going without health insurance tonight. That's wrong. Number two, it's personal. My wife and my mom had cancer. I cannot think of what would have happened if they did not have access to good health insurance. That's something that folks can't say and something that I want to change. Number three, I'm tired of supporting proposals that simply nibble around the edges of this monster that keeps getting larger and larger. We have to act on this right now. This is also going to save county government a lot of money because you're going to be able to address these root problems before they need help down the road. So this is something that can actually save taxpayer money. And then finally, the pandemic has shown that with all these disparate health systems competing against each other, we don't have the type of leadership and people coming together to address this issue. Those reasons show very plainly like we need Medicare for all, and it is a top issue in this campaign and will remain so. Big Pharma, couple things, if they're doing these things that they're not supposed to, yes, they should revoke patents. Number two, these medicines that will save lives, essential medicines, they should be off patent and allow production to go to developing countries. And then finally, not talked about this though, but when there are public dollars invested in research and development for these medicines, the NIH and taxpayers, we should get a cut from that. What's going on with Moderna right now, trying to take credit away from this is absolutely unacceptable and it should stop.
Thank you, Tom. Mandela?
All right, thank you so much. Let me tell you, let me set the stage. The United States is the only developed nation without universal health care. So of course, Medicare for all is the easiest way to get us to universal health care. It's unfortunate that the cost of prescription balloon the cost of healthcare in this country. And we also need to think about prevention, the same way I talk about criminal justice reform, making sure that we have the right resources in place so that communities can thrive. The fact is, we have a food system that is completely out of whack. The amount of money that we pay for healthcare in this country is also out of control. And if we can be more preventative with our food systems and make sure that people have access to fresh, healthy, nutritious food so that they can live healthy lives and have fewer doctor visits, that will help us out a great deal as well. But in terms of pharmaceutical companies, the fact is the amount of public money, I should say, that goes into R&D means that they socialize the risk, but they privatize the gain. That is unfortunate because we continue to see drug prices hiked in this country. And if we don't do something, if we don't make sure that they have to explain the reasoning behind these drug prices hikes, then we're going to be in a world of trouble. We're going to continue to see these prices skyrocket. Now, what we can do in the immediate term is expand Medicare to people who are 55 years old. We can also expand Medicare to include dental, vision, and hearing, because our eyes, our ears are all a part of our body as well as our mouths. But for whatever strange reason, our healthcare system doesn't see it that way. So we need bold solutions to take a more comprehensive approach to healthcare in this country. That's what I'm committed to working towards. It's the work that we have been doing.
Thank you, Mandela. Dr. Bettino.
I absolutely support Medicare for all. I would advocate for a single payer system. As everyone has stated, the cost of healthcare in this country is astronomical. The ACA was helpful, but it is not a complete solution. We still have millions and millions of Americans who do not have adequate healthcare coverage. And I see them, I take care of them, and I'm telling you, it unequivocally causes death. So we need to make sure that we have complete healthcare coverage from prenatal care to end-of-life care, and that includes the opportunity for our government to negotiate for prescription drugs. And as clearly stated, we are all tired of using taxpayer dollars to develop pharmaceuticals and then be charged exorbitant increasing fees to utilize those pharmaceuticals. It is unethical to not allow developing nations to have access to production within their countries. I've seen this real time in Guyana and Nicaragua. and it can absolutely be devastating to those countries. We need to allow it. And finally, Medicare for All will empower our unions, our small farms, women. It will fight for racial justice, disability justice. It will fight for our veterans and our elderly. So all of these things are wrapped together, and we absolutely need to get behind it.
Thank you, Dr. Botino. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, this issue is personal to me. I remember a time in my life when my car had better health insurance than I did. And you know what? I don't want to go back to those days. And thanks to Obamacare, I didn't. But let's face it, we've got to do a lot more work. And I think it starts with expanding Medicaid. I mean, right here in Wisconsin, we saw our legislature refuse to expand Medicaid, which would provide insurance for 90,000 Wisconsinites. That's 90,000 Wisconsinites that don't have access to any care. But we can't stop there. I've been traveling this state talking to seniors who are telling me how they can't pay for their dentures or for their hearing aids or for their eyeglasses. And so we've got to expand Medicare to make sure that we cover those expensive things like dentures, because right now they don't have the means to do that. But the other thing that when I'm traveling the state that I'm hearing over and over again is mental health, how it's just inaccessible and it's unaffordable. And we have to do everything we can to fight to make sure everyone has access to the right mental health care that they need. And right now in rural Wisconsin, there's not even a psychiatrist in every county for people to go to. And they don't have the broadband they need to get telemedicine. And finally, I mean, we have to hold the pharmaceutical companies accountable, because the fact that we can't negotiate lower drug prices and they're price gouging us is absolutely ridiculous, because Wisconsinites are skipping pills, not because they want to, but because they can't afford it. And I will tell you, I will fight like hell to make sure everybody has quality, affordable care here in Wisconsin.
Thank you, Sarah. Before we get to our next question, let's do a quick audience check-in. I know these issues of mass incarceration, healthcare, climate inequity, and more are important to all of you. These are the issues we at Citizen Action organize on all year round. So join us in this work. Get involved today. Pull out your phone right now, text WIN, W-I-N, to 51767 to join our Deep Canvas program. So since we're checking in with the audience, I thought I would let you all, organizing director, Kate Beaton, that we have 831 people tuning in through our Crowdcast link. That is amazing. She also let me know that there are 129 viewers on our Facebook. Wow, I can feel the people power, right? Major flex, y'all. Thank you for showing up tonight. Let's keep the questions going. I want to welcome Yuseli Flores, a member of our Southeast Wisconsin Co-op. Yuseli?
Thanks, Joanna. I am tuning in from Milwaukee, also known as Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I'm the, I guess, part of the Southeastern Wisconsin Co-op. And my question is centering immigration. So most Americans believe that our immigration system is badly broken and it doesn't live up to our values as a nation of immigrants. Despite this consensus, no comprehensive immigration reform has been successfully enacted since the 1980s. Most Democrats support the more popular incremental reforms in the immigrant rights agenda, but a few will take a stand to support a full structural reform, and some won't even move to eliminate the Senate filibuster, which dooms all immigration reform to failure. Briefly, what major measures do you support to guarantee dignity and respect for all immigrants? And would you support eliminating the filibuster to pass them? Thank you.
Thank you, Yuseli. Let's start this round with Tom Nelson.
Great, and thank you very much for the question. What I'd like to say for this is this is a big issue, and we hear a lot about this from the other side. Republicans who make a big deal about this, who do a lot of dog whistling and more in the campaigns. But here's what happens: they have never brought a major piece of immigration reform legislation to the floor of the Senate or the floor of the House of Representatives. And the reason why is because this is part of their business model. We have seen too often all across the country unethical business owners who are exploiting this labor, and that is wrong. And even worse, the people that should be accounted for are those folks that are abusing and exploiting the workers. What we need to do is we need to have a pathway to citizenship. But what we have to address at the border is the fact that this is a failure of US foreign policy. The reason why we have this issue is because we have these regimes in Central America that are getting away with a lot of really bad things. And we need to make sure that the US government is not giving these regimes foreign aid, military aid that do not comply with these issues. Outagamie County, we have been a leader in resettling refugees, and this is something that is becoming very, very important as we deal with the Afghan refugees. So the issue of amnesty, the issue of refugees, and the issue of immigration, these are three issues that need to be addressed and something that I will work on as your U.S. Senator.
Thank you, Tom. Mandela?
Yep, thank you so much. The issue of immigration is one that has been especially important to me, even though I don't have a specific connection to the issue, but it is one of humanity. It's one of human dignity. And unfortunately, our current immigration policy violates the humanity and dignity of so many people. So we have to have a realistic roadmap to full citizenship for undocumented residents of this country, especially our DACA recipients. And we have pushed for tuition equity, as I've stated before. We have pushed for driver's license for undocumented workers. I've traveled this entire state, and I've talked and I've spoke with farmers, and I've spoke with people in rural communities who support comprehensive immigration reform, a path that can be a little more expeditious than the one we're on now. But the reality is the former president set us so far backwards in terms of immigration and so far backwards in the debate over immigration. He has made unfair claims. He has made very disgusting characterizations of people who are just coming here for a better way of life. So it's important for us to reverse the policies that criminalize immigration, the policies that strip due process and limit judicial discretion. We have a responsibility as the most powerful and the most wealthy nation on earth, a country where this isn't most people's place of origin in their family line. The fact is, we have to prevent rampant violations of worker rights as well. We also have to abolish the federal programs that encourage local law enforcement agencies to function as immigration agencies. We have to address also the root causes of migration by investing in the programs that improve prosperity and living conditions in those countries that are south of the border. And we also have to invest in development solutions. But most importantly, we have to fast track this path to citizenship for so many people who are more than deserving of being full citizens of this country.
Thank you, Mandela. Dr. Bettino?
Okay, so, let's be honest. There are some pieces of immigration that are uncomfortable to talk about. And I think right now, something that is really front and foremost on our discussions here is voter rights and voter suppression. The lack of forward movement and reform, comprehensive reform, and efficient, effective pathway to citizenship for our DACA recipients and for the many, many people who are undocumented that live and work and call this country their home. This is a form of voter suppression, not getting them the vote that they deserve, that they have worked for. I think we also need to acknowledge that in this country, we are the immigrants. Most of the people on this call are the immigrants, right? We all immigrated to this country, except for our indigenous populations. And so I think we need to recognize that and respect that. We need to have comprehensive reform that is addressing the issue of separating children on the southern border. And we need to have efficient, effective pathway to citizenship that takes into account the fact that when folks come here, they need health, housing, healthcare, education, and all of the same opportunities that everyone else needs to become part of the fabric of this nation, so that when they look back in 50 years, they can say, yeah, it was my dad who came from XYZ and built this country in the great infrastructure rebuild of 2022 when President Biden took over. So that's what I want to see. That's my dream for the future. And I know we can do that.
Thank you, Dr. Bettino. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we can all agree that we are a great country because of immigrants, and that's one of our greatest strengths. And when I think about my relatives who immigrated from Poland, they came here for a better life. Yet Donald Trump and Ron Johnson would think that the only way to handle this is to basically degrade immigrants, put them in cages, and build a wall that costs taxpayers trillions of dollars is the only way to handle it. And it's just ridiculous because we know that's not what our history is and who we are as a nation. I mean, for starters, we've got to provide people a path to citizenship. And what does that look like? I'm talking about the dreamers who have been born and who are in this country, and it's the only nation that they know. They not only have jobs here, but they pay taxes. And we need to set them on a clear path of citizenship. Also with our undocumented workers, we saw during the pandemic, they were on the front lines. They were literally working in our hospitals. They were taking care of our elderly. And yet we don't have a way to make them citizens for everything that they are doing. And, you know, the final thing that I have horrible memories of as a mom is we all saw how Donald Trump was ripping children from their families. We right now, Congress needs to use those resources to reunite those families. There's almost 200 families that have never seen their kids since they came to this border. They were coming here for a better life, and we've got to step up, and shame on Democrats in Congress for not taking this more seriously.
Thank you, Sarah. Let's wrap this one up with Alex Lasry.
Yeah, I mean, immigration is an important issue for me because my dad's an immigrant. I'm a family that comes from immigrants. And so, you know, what I think we need to make sure that we're doing is passing a 21st century immigration system. One where, you know, people who are here have a pathway to citizenship. And, you know, I worked in the White House when we were trying to pass the DREAM Act. And so this is an issue that's of the utmost importance because you know, we need to make sure that, you know, we're able to bring the best and brightest to this country, and people who are looking for better opportunity are able to come here. And one of the best ways that we can also make sure that we're fixing our immigration system is by also helping countries that, you know, people are fleeing. We want to make sure that people who want to stay at home can and feel like they can be at home successfully, but also people who come here are able to do so with dignity and get the better life that they're searching. And that's what my dad did, and that's what I want to make sure that we're able to do. But one of the things that we don't talk enough about in this state is the immigration crisis that we're having here. We don't have the ability to bring in enough work visas for people who are able to work the jobs to help make sure that our state is able to continue to grow. You know, I was just at a ginseng farm in Wausau and in Door County, and in dairy farms across the state are having trouble getting workers to do the jobs to move our state forward. And that's why we need to make sure that we're not only passing and talking about immigration of what's going on at the border, but also talking about work visas to ensure that we're able to bring people in to do the jobs to move our state forward.
All right, we are moving right along. Next, I would like to welcome our North Central Co-op member and board member, Vic Verma.
Thank you, Joanna. My name is Vic Verma, Wisconsin, and I am a member of the North Central Co-op, which is centered in Wausau and the surrounding counties of North Central Wisconsin. My question is on workers' rights. Most workers want to join unions, but are denied the opportunity by a labor law system that is rigged in favor of employers. Over the past 4 decades, a labor law system designed during the New Deal to guarantee the right of workers to form unions has been reinterpreted into a system that forces workers to risk their economic futures to exercise a basic human right. Do you support the Protect the Right to Organize Act, or PRO Act, which passed the House and is currently stalled in the Senate? If so, how do you propose to pass it by a major vote in the United States Senate? Thank you.
Thank you, Vic. We're going to begin this round with Mandela.
Thank you so much. And my support of the PRO Act is a no-brainer. I literally would not have an opportunity to sit here in front of you all today if we were not for the rights of workers to collective bargain, both public and private sector. My mother, being a retired public school teacher, having spent her entire career as a member of the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association. My dad, again, as a member of the UAW. They instilled in me a set of values, but most importantly, they were able to provide a certain quality of life that could have been considered a luxury to so many other people that I was around. But I think about so many other folks, and I think about this country and the decline of the middle class that can be directly correlated to the decline in union membership in this country. It is imperative for us to empower workers. Over the course of this pandemic, we have seen billionaire wealth increase an additional $2 trillion. That is unimaginable, especially as so many folks still struggle, still are going to be wondering how they're going to get health insurance if they leave their jobs, how they're going to be able to put food on the table. It is unconscionable that the level of income inequality in this country continues to balloon because our unions were the only thing stopping that from happening. Our unions are the only thing that kept that in check. And as you mentioned, how do we get that passed? Well, it starts by winning this seat. It starts by getting rid of people like Ron Johnson. Right now, it feels like our country, because of people like him, is run by the most wealthy people, millionaires and billionaires controlling the agenda. In this campaign, it can be a hard stop to that right now. Getting rid of Ron Johnson, getting rid of the influence of the ultra wealthy in our politics, because it is destroying us from the inside out.
Thank you, Mandela. Let's move to Dr. Bettino.
So I would certainly support the PRO Act and expanding Davis-Bacon, anything to reverse Act 10 and its effect on our state. Unions get right what our society needs to get right. And I think our first unions started in Wisconsin in like 1874, I don't know, 174 years ago, long time ago. And it's been a core part of our working class and the culture of our working class here in Wisconsin. Immigration rights, racial rights, women's rights, gender gap, LGBTQ rights, safety, education, disability, a safe retirement. These are all things that are so basic and so important. So absolutely, we will fight for that. In terms of how to get it done, well, we need to control the Senate. We need to empower and inspire Wisconsinites, people that we've lost from our agricultural section, bring them back to the table, meet them where they are, talk to them about what matters, and make sure that they are voting along democratic principles for Democrats to take over that Senate and control it. And then we need to stop being so polite and tolerant of folks like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. We need to hold their feet to the fire. Their state wants them to support unions, and both of them, I think there's concerning behavior that they will not. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bettino. Sarah?
Well, I am a proud product of a union family from Eau Claire. And in fact, I will tell you, this is personal because my mom retired early from her career in teaching, not because she wanted to, but because of Act 10. And she was really worried about her health benefits. And I am sick and tired of politicians and corporations saying that unions are bad for the economy. Because the reality is, of the top 5 state economies, all but one are pro-union states. Why? Because we know when unions do well, our people do well, and our economies do well. And we can stop at nothing less to make sure that unions are the law of this land. And it starts with passing the PRO Act. I mean, we've got to organize to make sure collective bargaining. We have to stop the Amazons of the world from interfering with our elections. And we have to have corporations and hold them accountable for bad conditions. As state treasurer, this is something I've been on the front lines doing. I actually brought state treasurers together and using our investment authority accountable and say enough during the pandemic. When they weren't providing their workers with PPE, I said that we're not going to support that behavior. Or when they were meddling with the organizing that was going on in the southern part of our country, I said, you can't keep doing that. And then the other thing I will just say is we have to not only ensure Davis-Bacon, but we've got to raise the minimum wage because this is a workers' right issue as well. And so I will make sure that unions have a voice at the US Senate table because it's near and dear to me and I've been fighting for them ever since.
Thank you, Sarah. We're going to hear from Alex Lasry next.
Well, we've said that our top priorities when we get to the Senate is going to be not only passing the PRO Act, but also ending the filibuster. Because if we want to be able to pass the agenda that the people have voted us into office for, we need to make sure that we can actually pass that agenda. And that starts with ending the filibuster. And making sure that labor rights are our top priority is why you've seen in our TV ads and our announcement video that we have, come out forcefully in favor of labor rights. And I don't think that we need to, and we've shown, I think, in my history of having gotten things done, that labor and management can work together to make sure that we grow business and raise wages. And that's why we're seeing labor supporting our campaign. We've gotten the most labor endorsements of any candidate in this race, and the only one to have statewide labor support. And we're the only candidate in this race to have a unionized campaign staff. So we're not just talking about the importance of labor rights in this campaign. We've actually done it and are leading on it in this campaign. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that we can do to make sure that the income gap is actually closed, is how do we make sure that we're raising wages? And that starts with having workers have a seat at the table. It's something we've done at Fiserv Forum and something I'm going to continue to do when I get to the US Senate.
All right, we are going to hear from Tom Nelson.
Great. Thank you for that question, Vic. Labor has been the cornerstone of my labors of my public service. So yes, we need to pass the PRO Act. We also need, but that's just a start. We need to repeal the Taft-Hartley Act, where union membership began to decline back in the 1940s. We also need to crack open the Wagner Act and get rid of the inherently racist provision that makes it difficult for some workers to organize. The reason why we've not made progress on this is because 2/3 of the US Senate are comprised of millionaires and billionaires. And you're not going to get these type of reforms by sending another millionaire or a billionaire to the US Senate. I am proud to have the most endorsements from labor leaders and labor unions. Everything from John Matthews to Kyla Engelke, the Appleton firefighters, local 599, OPCMIA. But we have to go beyond this. We have to look at how we got to this. We have to reject neoliberalism policy. We have to get rid of the bad trade deals that have shipped jobs overseas. We have to get rid of these tax cuts for the rich that have hurt American workers. Labor is a big part of my service, and I wrote a book. I wrote a book that talked about my work with the local steelworkers union in saving a paper mill. A big bank using receivership law tried shutting us down. We fought back, prevailed on a judge, and we got that mill running again, bring back 300 good paying union jobs. I talk a lot about this issue because this is important to Wisconsinites, and this is important to the folks that I grew up with on Carolyn Drive, where all the dads were mill workers. We had public school teachers. Those are the four folks that I fought for as a legislator, as a county executive, and will as your US Senator.
Thank you all. I want y'all to know that my team is messaging me, the Citizen Action staff, and just letting me know how it's going in the Crowdcast link. And they're saying that the chat is lit. And we even had a request that if this could air on public television. So y'all are giving Wisconsinites and everyone tuning in exactly what they want to hear. So we're getting down to our final questions. I want to thank you all for your participation in this event. Folks watching from home, our 5 candidates that are committing to working hard for our state, the staff of Citizen Action and People's Action, all of our partner organizations, and of course, all of our members from across Wisconsin. This next question is coming from Phoebe Burchill, a member from our affiliate organization, way at the top of the state, Progress North. Phoebe?
Yes, hello. My name is Phoebe Burchill. I live in Ashland, Wisconsin, way up on the shores of Lake Superior. I volunteer with Progress North, which is a Northwoods organization with the primary focus of connecting the people of Northern Wisconsin to each other across all demographics. We value equity and people-centered democracy, and we believe that if we come together, we can shift the monetary imbalance and ensure that everyone can earn a good life. We can fund our schools, and we can provide families of all kinds with the care we all need and deserve. I also want to thank each of the candidates, the forum organizers, and attendees. My question is about tax fairness. The US tax system has grown more and more regressive, taxing capital at a lower rate than work. A lot of the problem is legalized tax dodging. The system requires a complete overhaul to restore the principle of progressive taxation. What steps will you support to create an accountable and progressive tax code? Thank you.
All right, we are going to begin this round with Dr. Bettino.
Thank you. So, you know, I believe that we can fairly say that much of the things that we can't accomplish right now in our society are because so many of the extremely wealthy people in this country do not pay their fair share of taxes. They're utilizing our infrastructure, our airports, our roads, and they are not paying their fair share of taxes. And this is because of legalized loopholes. I call this loophole nation sometimes. It seems like you can figure out a way to get around anything, you know, hire enough lawyers and tax lawyers and figure out how to protect your assets without paying your fair share of taxes. I'm a proud taxpayer. My children, all 6 of them, either have or will graduate from Wausau West High School. I drive on Wisconsin's roads, and I am a proud taxpayer. I think all of us should aspire to be proud taxpayers. So things I would change, I think absolutely we need to have a wealth tax of 3%. I would like to see a corporate tax up to 28%, maybe even higher, but 28% of corporate tax. I would like to discourage, you know, create incentives and disincentives so that folks and corporations are not having their monies held in offshore banks. And I would like to impose a tax of at least 21% on international companies that are working in the United States. So these are the things that I would like to see to make sure that we hold the extremely wealthy accountable and give them the same appropriate responsibility and gift of tax paying that we enjoy in this country.
Sarah Godlewski.
Well, it is clear that our tax system is broken because right now we have a two-tier tax system. We have for the rich and corporations, and then we have a tax system for everyone else. And we saw this front and center during the pandemic when Jeff Bezos made billions of dollars on Amazon, but yet none of that was taxed. And at the same time, you know, my husband's an impact investor, and the fact that we pay a lower percentage in taxes than my parents who are retired public school teachers is absolutely ridiculous. That's why my first policy proposal as a US Senate candidate was a wealth tax. In fact, Senator Ron Johnson attacked me for this and said, this is crazy because you know what? The system is broken and we've got to start with making sure that the middle class does not shoulder the burden. We've got to lower the burden on middle class. We've got to make sure the child tax credits are actually permanent. We have to provide important relief to our senior citizens. We've got to make sure that we are cutting taxes for the middle class because their income is what is really being taxed at the end of the day, not wealth. The second piece is we've got to tax the millionaires and billionaires a lot more. What I came out with my policy was talking about how people who make more than like $5 million or just millionaires in general are paying a lot more money on that income. Right now, you know, if you look at Jeff Bezos, he makes $60,000 a year, but yet it's millions of dollars in wealth and none of that wealth is taxed. We've got to make sure we are taxing that wealth. That is at the heart of what we can be able to then use to make sure that we're funding our schools and funding our roads. You know, the final thing is we've got to close those corporate loopholes. You know, those annoying commercials, for example, that you see from pharma. Those are commercials that get subsidies, are fossil fuel companies that are still getting subsidies. Like this to me is at one of the heart of things that I will do. And I've been doing it at work, the work I've been doing as state treasurer, and I will do it as the next US Senator.
Thank you, Sarah. We are going to move to Alex Lasry.
Yeah, look, I think this is an extremely important question and one in how we're going to be able to stop the economic inequality that we've seen and really make sure that we close the wealth gap. And one of the things that I think we need to do is obviously, you know, the wealthy need to make sure that they're paying their fair share. We need to make sure that corporations are paying their fair share. I'm all for a global minimum corporate tax. I'm for the corporate minimum tax that was proposed in the Build Back Better agenda. But what I also think we really need to make sure that we're talking about is how we're going to raise wages. Because the best way to make sure that we close the wealth gap and that we stop income inequality is to make sure that we can raise wages. And that's why we've proposed ideas and initiatives such as giving corporations an incentive through our tax code. And how do we make sure that small businesses and corporations are paying above and beyond the minimum wage? So if a small business or a company is paying $30 an hour, we'll give you a tax cut for that. If you bring your manufacturing and supply chain operations back from overseas and invest here in America, we'll give you a tax break for that. And if you allow your companies to unionize and don't fight with anti-union bullying efforts, we can give you a tax incentive for that as well. And so what we hope to show with this campaign is that there's actually a way forward in making sure that we're closing the income inequality gap through the tax code, not just by making the wealthy and corporations paying their fair share, but also incentivizing the behavior that we want to ensure that we're creating higher wages and closing the income gap.
Tom?
Thank you for the question, Phoebe. We need to tax the rich. And we need to tax the rich not just because that's our opponent, Ron Johnson. We need to tax the rich because it's the right thing to do and it works. Before Ronald Reagan cut taxes and the marginal tax rate was 70%, corporations had the incentive to plow their earnings into pension plans, in research and development, and in higher wages. That is one of the biggest problems we have. And when that happened, you saw union density go down. You saw productivity go up, but worker gains going down. What we need to do is we need to get rid of the Trump tax cuts. We need to sign on to legislation like Elizabeth Warren's ultra wealth tax. We need to start at 3%, but evaluate. We need to evaluate at that point. It could be more. And the other thing too, though, is we talk about tax fairness. We talk about raising taxes on the rich. We need to do that, but we have to look at the front end of the problem and how the very wealthy got all of their money in the first place. We have allowed monopolization. We've seen corporate consolidation on unprecedented level. People like David Dayen or John Nichols or Zebra Teachout, they talk about how we need to have tougher antitrust laws. We need to enforce those so that we don't see the kind of wealth accumulation that has led to massive income disparities. Address the issue on the front end, because I think it is unacceptable that people like Ron Johnson, who are millionaires, that they actually pay less taxes than a lot of us, including the Nelson household, something that Mrs. Nelson did not like when she learned about that.
Thank you, Tom. Mandela?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll say that a wealth tax is our way to end the scourge of income inequality in this country. It's unfortunate when you look at the reality of people just in this state alone, people who live in communities like the 53206 zip code, where just 5 miles down the road, the quality of life is incredibly different. And it's because of the availability of services. Now, unfortunately, the reality is we don't have these services available to everybody because the wealthy don't pay their fair share. And the responsible thing to do is to implement a wealth tax. But we still see every instance where rich people will try to find and take advantage of every possible loophole. That is the reality of where we are in this country. And the glorification of wealth is why we are where we are in this country. Think about how many multi-million-dollar or multi-billion-dollar fortunes were created because of a government subsidy. While at the same time, government doesn't see the benefit. The people in any state, any given country, or any given city don't get to, or excuse me, this country, or any given state or city don't get to see the benefit of that wealth that they helped generate. The lower class and middle class individuals in this country are providing lifestyle subsidies for the already wealthy. And now we have to obviously repeal the Trump tax cuts for the very wealthy. We also have to tax the businesses that move their jobs offshores and still generate vast profits. You know, where my granddad worked after serving in World War II, that factory doesn't exist anymore. The factory my dad worked at, it's a strip mall now. And I think about the opportunities to gain entry into the middle class, how they've been cut off for everyday people in this country is something, like I said, we should be ashamed of. Taxing the wealthy is the least we can do.
Thank you, Mandela. So we've had a lot of great questions tonight from members, questions that center our progressive agenda. And I know there has been a lot of action in the chat. There's been a lot of questions submitted, but we do only have time to take one of those questions. So this coming straight from the audience, give me a second to pull out. All right, here we go. How do you plan to get ahead of Republicans using CRT weapon? We are going to begin this round of answers with Sarah Godlewski.
I mean, as the daughter of two public school teachers, I think it's really important that we teach our history. And that is something that is near and dear. And look, I think that this whole CRT conversation is a distraction that the Republicans have used to actually stop us from talking about the issues that matter most. I mean, right here in Wisconsin, we saw how the state legislature basically said no to almost $1.5 billion that would have helped fund public education here in our state. And that's what they are walking away from. They don't want to have the hard conversations where we know our teachers are paying for crayons and are paying for Kleenexes and things for our classrooms because they're not being supplied and resources aren't being given. And so to me, this all is a distraction. And we saw firsthand what happened in Virginia, how we can't let that distract us, that we actually have to talk about the issues that Wisconsinites are facing. And for me, this goes back into making sure that we have a good quality public education, making sure that our schools are resourced appropriately, making sure we actually pay our teachers decent salaries. The fact that I know so many teachers who are struggling and have second jobs on top of their teaching job because they can't pay or own a home or pay for their health care. So that to me is what this all comes down to, because Wisconsin is known for having a great quality education and we need to continue that fight.
Tom?
I think what we have to do here is we can't get sucked into these traps. It seems like every election cycle, there's some sort of buzzword that Republicans throw at it. We know what it is. It's dog whistling, or sometimes even more blatant than that. What we have to do is we have to change the debate. We have to change the topics. Look, voters are rejecting this. The recall elections in Wisconsin Rapids and Mequon-Thiensville, they rejected these attempts. What they want to do is they want to hear about candidates like us, not Ron Johnson, who are going to talk to the issues that are affecting working families. That is what Democrats do, and that is what we do best. We should not be distracted by this. We shouldn't spend any time even countenancing this. What we have to do is we have to focus on the issues that matter to us. Elections are not about candidates. Elections are not about these buzzwords. Elections are not being distracted by dog whistling and things that go to our darker sides. Listen to our better angels. Whoever's running this race, all the candidates here, you have a reason for why you got into this race in the first place. I got in because I want to make a better community for people like Mary and George, my kids, whether it's the issues with climate change, with economic security, with health security. All of my campaigns and my public service has been focused on the bread and butter issues that matter to voters, to people in our community, and that is not going to stop me.
Thank you, Tom. Mandela?
Yeah, yes. I actually have to sort of change my answer on the fly because it feels like the previous response is that we shouldn't talk about this. And for a lack of talking about race critically in this country is why we see the disparities that we do. Too many politicians have gotten away with not addressing race, feeling like you can just take on whatever issue and ignoring the elephant in the room. The reality is, the United States of America is the most wealthy. It is the most powerful nation on earth, and that is because of forced labor on stolen land. We have to teach the reality of why we are where we are, or else people will just assume it just happened this way because of hard work, because of pulling up by your bootstraps. The reason why we haven't seen an increase in the minimum wage since 2009 is because, again, this is a nation where the wealth was built off of free forced labor. And the fact is, low wages are what's going to keep millionaire and billionaire wealth intact. And this all has a racial component because we're talking about Black and brown people in this country. We should be talking about indigenous communities that have been relegated to very specific parts of the state that haven't had the most resources that these communities deserve. These are the people who have been left behind, the people who have made this nation exactly what it is. And we've talked about our immigrant communities. And, I come from a line of forced migration into this country. So this is a very real issue for me, and ignoring it is the last thing that we should do. We should teach objectively. We should speak critically about why this nation is the way that it is, why we have the highest rate of Black male incarceration in Wisconsin, why the United States is the #1 jailer in the entire country. If we do in earnest, if young people don't learn the reality, we will never be where we should be.
We have to move to Dr. Bettino now. Thank you, Mandela.
Thank you so much. So, critical race theory, I think I would like to redefine how we discuss that with folks. I think that the Republican Party has a very intentional habit of creating these buzzwords, whether we're talking about critical race theory or defund the police, or for that matter, pro-choice or abortion access care. And I think that the issues themselves are of utter importance, but when someone says critical race theory to me, I'm going to say history. I'm going to talk about, the real truth behind what has happened in the last 400 years and what happened to our, to our tribal nations and our indigenous people when we came to these lands. I think that we need to elevate the conversation and the belief that this country can be better, and integrate that into our education. People want to talk about education. They want to talk about accurate information for our children. And they're just trying to disturb the discussion with the term critical race theory. Same thing for defund the police. Let's talk about recreating public safety. Let's talk about healthcare and reproductive justice and having a safe place to raise our children and the right to choose to have a child or not to choose to have a child. So I think that these are the buzzwords that they create, and we need to push back by redefining those terms in a more open, inclusive, and non-confrontational, divisive fashion. The issues are important.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bettino. All right, y'all, we have touched on a lot of topics this evening, a lot of important topics, but we are coming to a close. I would like to welcome our candidates to share any closing remarks. Again, you have 2 minutes for this part of the forum, and we will begin with Tom Nelson.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Joanna, and thank you, Citizen Action, for everyone joining us today. What this comes down to is this: who can beat Ron Johnson? That's something everyone agrees on. I'm the only candidate from a red part of the state who's won election, re-election 6 times, 3 as a legislator and 3 as a county executive. I have the track record of taking on tough elections, tough opponents, and winning. This race is not for on-the-job training. This is for someone who has shown the folks in this state that they can get elected. And not just winning elections by running good campaigns, but showing that you can work together, that you can advance a progressive agenda. I was a Bernie Sanders delegate last year, and I come from Joe McCarthy's home county. I was able to bring Democrats, Republicans together on any number of reforms for the county, whether it's criminal justice treatment services reform, whether it is making sure our public health department was strong when there was no support from the GOP legislature, when there was no support from President Trump or from Ron Johnson. We took it upon ourselves, working together within this community, to set up our own vaccination clinic, to set up our own testing sites. The list goes on. At my core, I look to people that I grew up with, the folks on Carolyn Drive. They're the folks for which I've dedicated 17 years of public service, doing that as a legislator and doing that as a county executive. I've got 2 young kids, Mary and George. They see their dad picking up and leaving for a weekend, and they want to know why I'm gone, my 5 and 7-year-old. And I simply tell them this: I want to make sure that all the moms and dads, if their mom and dad get sick, just like their mom, I want to make sure that there will be folks that they will be able to be taken care of too. Because we need to have a strong community. We need to have people looking out for each other and doing all we can to help our neighbors. That's why I'm a Democrat, and that's what made this a great state in the great country. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mandela?
Well, thank you so much. Again, I'm incredibly honored to be able to participate in this forum. Very excited to be in this race because we are building the broadest coalition of folks from all over the state of Wisconsin. People from all 72 counties stepped up to donate between $3 and $5 to this campaign in our very first quarter. We were able to raise over $1 million with an average contribution of under $50. That shows the support that we were able to build in a very short amount of time. I'm proud to have been endorsed by over 100 elected officials from all across the state. And I'm also proud to have earned the support of Senator Elizabeth Warren, a person who has been a champion in the fight against income inequality. But I'm so happy to have the support of so many grassroots leaders across Wisconsin, the people that I marched with, the people that I fought with as an organizer, the people who I work with to bring about real change. And I'm so proud of the work that we have done as an administration. Having traveled to all 72 counties, we did this for some good reasons. We did this for some challenging reasons. Unfortunately, in some instances, it was responding to the addiction crisis that has ravaged rural parts of this state. And also some of the historic weather events that we have been seeing as a result of climate change. And we've been able to galvanize support because of it for our initiatives to combat the climate crisis. We have set and put forth the most bold agenda to address climate change. We went from being a state of denial to a leader in this fight, a recognized leader nationally. And I can't take credit for this work because there were so many amazing people around me that made it happen. And that's how we're going to win this race, because we know that this is so much bigger than Senator Ron Johnson. And you may notice this is like my first or second time saying his name, because that's not the important part. The important part is our values. The important part is our vision. The important part is how we build a broad, multiracial, intergenerational, cross-regional coalition that will form into community, because that's what truly lasts, to bring about the real change that people deserve in this country, to address our concerns around healthcare, the climate crisis, and rebuilding this middle class, and ultimately lowering the levels of inequality that continue to exist in this state and in this country. Wisconsin has done the bold things before. This is the time for us to do the bold things again. We're the first state to declare the Fugitive Slave Act unconstitutional, first state to ratify the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote, first state to have anti-discrimination laws based on sexual orientation on the books. We're going to do bold things again, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Mandela. Dr. Bettino?
So, how do we win this race? I think that's the question. How do we beat, Ron Johnson? How do we beat whoever might step in for him, Mike Gallagher? I think we need to inspire. I think that now is the time to meet the moment in this country. It is the time to meet the moment in this state. Everybody is watching this state. I would be the very first woman physician to ever serve in the US Senate in the history of this country, at a time where we are fighting for paid family medical leave, where we are fighting for reproductive justice, where we are fighting for Medicare for all, where we have a global pandemic that has killed hundreds of thousands of people. I understand this. I have done this work. I have gone to developing countries and inspired groups of young people to come together despite their differences in political background, religion, or what have you, to build incredible, sustainable, high impact programs. I can do that again for the United States Senate. I will do that for Wisconsin, bringing integrity, science, representation for women, and all of that to a place where it needs to be. It is high time. We want 50% of the US Senate to be female by 2028. We can start here with this race, 2 women from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Dr. Bettino. Sarah.
Well, thank you, Citizen Action, for having me. And I actually look forward to doing something like this again, because I think we left some key issues on the table, like reproductive justice, which we know is super important and something that continues to be an afterthought in Congress. But, the question that I believe we all are talking about is who can beat Ron Johnson, because it's not going to be easy to beat a 2-time incumbent. And, this is something I know how to do. I've run and won 2 statewide campaigns, beating Scott Walker and his allies when everybody told me I couldn't do it. When I ran the constitutional amendment, we took 62% of the vote. And then when I ran as state treasurer, I flipped more Trump counties than the governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general in my race for state treasurer. And people ask me, well, how did you do this? Well, growing up in Western Wisconsin and being the oldest daughter of 2 public school teachers, I had to learn how to be scrappy. And that's not only how I've run my campaigns, it's honestly how I've lived my life. Whether it was my time at the Pentagon and saving tax dollars in the largest bureaucracy in this country, to starting my own business. But I think the best example of this is honestly serving as your state treasurer. You know, when I walked into my office, it was completely decimated by my Republican predecessors. I had literally wires hanging from the ceiling. I had no Wi-Fi, and they gave me a flip phone that was a pay-as-you-go phone to talk to constituents. But you know what? Despite these barriers, I wasn't going to let that stop me from serving Wisconsin. I started a homeownership network that helped people buy, fix, and stay in their homes. I provided a special distribution for public schools during the COVID so they could get access to hotspots and e-learning books to help their distance learning. And I overturned a Republican gag order on climate change. And we started investing in renewable energy for schools, not just talking about climate change, doing things about it. And by being scrappy, I was able to do things that the state treasurer's office has never done before in the history of our. What people want from their elected officials. They want a scrappy leader who's going to get things done in Washington because it's broken. Look, Republicans have tried to stop me before, but I didn't let them then, and I'm not going to let them now. And I know that together we can flip this seat for Wisconsin.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you to all of our candidates who joined us for our 2022 U.S. Senate Candidate Forum. Alex Lasry, Dr. Jillian Bettino, Mandela Barnes, Sarah Godlewski, and Tom Nelson. Thank you all so much. I'm so sorry, folks, we're running a little bit over, but just give me 2 more minutes of your time. If you can't already tell, the 2022 election is going to be critical for us in the country. Oh, we say this every election year, but every election year we get better, we get stronger. I have been organizing in elections and I have seen us lose. And I can say without a doubt, the recipe for winning includes deep canvassing. Deep canvassing at its core is transformational, not transactional conversations. When we have these conversations, instead of arguing, when we open up space for what our communities actually need, and that's how we win. So if you are ready to be part of a transformational program, then join me. Pull out your phone right now and text 51767. Text WIN to 51767 to join our deep canvassing team. And if you're nervous about making calls, or if you're unsure on how to have these kind of team ready and willing to and be by your side every hour, and the way to rebuild our world. I hope all of you had a great night. Thank you again for tuning in, and please look out for our email with the survey so you can let us know who we should be supporting in this crucial election and what you thought of our event tonight. There is also a link at the bottom of the screen that you can follow to get to that survey. Thank you so much. Good night. Buenas noches. See y'all out there in the field.